Um, man, no, honestly, this really means a lot. Like, because I'm trying to like document everything.
Sure,
Like this is
as
my
you should.
journey because I do have a podcast and whatever, and like you are like somebody that I look up to. You, JH, Gary, whatever, all these people. So it's like crazy that hey, get a chance to chop it up with you for 30 minutes.
Very dope. Very dope.
Um, so basically, yeah. So what I'm about currently, I'm 21 years young at Baylor University. I'm a neuroscience and theater arts double major with an entrepreneurship minor. I thought I was going to be a doctor. I'm a first gen. I'm like definitely resonate with your stuff because I love the first generation American story because that's my story as well.
For
Family from
sure.
Zimbabwe. Parents divorced, but they still talk a little bit. So I'm the eldest. I'm the oldest son of an immigrant as well. So that's why I'm like I really love the stuff that you're doing.
I
So
hear that.
I thought I was gonna be a doctor, but I love acting and I love entertainment and all that stuff. And so I decided I'm jumping in that space. So basically, what I did is I started because this past summer I was applying to a bunch of internships and jobs, but I've always got rejected. So I'm like, you know what? It's just time to build my own. Like I'm tired of this. So so started a multimedia company, an internet production company. So Campus Cuts is the podcast. That's the thing. Then after that, I wrote a book. So that's print media. Um, what else? What else do I got? Retail. That's the main income flow. Iconic luxury streetwear. So that's like clothing, whatever. So I'm trying to take the elements of Dame Dash. Um, what do you call it? Dame Dash, Devon Franklin, Childish Gambino, and just try to like make it my own, but like just me, right?
Sure.
And
Sure.
JH. So I do public speaking. I got selected. I'm doing giving a TED talk in the spring.
Congrats.
Thank you so much, California State University Fullerton. But now,
Very dope.
so basically, what I'm doing is I know the path that I want to get to, but it's I'm still a little fuzzy on like what kind of actionable, tangible steps and how to continue to increase, class revenue for the business and then continue to expand. I recently applied for the Google Podcaster program because all my everybody used to say like you're everywhere, like you don't focus, but I'm like no, I know where I want to go, but I think the podcast is going to be my point of leverage, and if I get selected for that podcaster program in September, I think they're going to help with funding, marketing, producing. Because I've done an independent indie over 60,000 plays before it got shut down by Anchor. Little got ran into like they flagged it for copyright because I used one Nipsey song, and it was it was crazy how long it took. But so I'm starting from zero again. But how am I able to create using creativity in a way that's going to continue to establish community and continue to resonate with people, right? And then so yeah.
Okay. Give me a little bit about. So, is your end goal to be a personality and a personal brand that touches people through different mediums? Is it to have a business that you are running, which kind of ties all that together? Where do you see yourself in terms of like when you think about your end goal? Is it more about you? Is it more about something that you're building outside of obviously a media company that's associated with everything that you're doing?
Right, right. It's more about like the end goal is more about people, but I know that before I do that, I have to start with me, right? So I got to continue to establish my own personal brand in order to continue to leverage that to be done, give back, do what I can. So recently, what I've been doing is like I've been doing giveaways. So I'm giving like first money and as well as like my merch, and then as well as like using my clothing line was able to get revenue of $10,000 after after like George Floyd, and like I was really inspired. Like okay, I have this platform, I have this clothing company. How can I able to
Sure.
use that as a way like use my monetary funds? So just build up the funds and 100% let's donate it to different organizations or whatever, right?
Very
So
cool.
yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. So I think for you, think about who do you speak to, because for you the goal here is if you can reach all the people that think like you and need to have someone who represents the things you represent speak to them, right?
Yeah.
That's what's going to fuel your growth. So again, if you know me a little bit, I'm really centered in this idea of community being the core of how brands grow in this new era.
Right.
So it used to be technology and advertising that used to grow brands, and I think there's still an element of that naturally. But it's my honest opinion that it's all about community that drives these type of that drives longevity in brands. And if you look at some of the most notable brands that have survived, whether it's a brand like Nipsey Hussle, whether it's a brand like Piermont, or things that are really like taking shape right now in culture.
Right.
A lot of it is because of their focus on community.
Right.
And I think that what you're seeing now is a lot of these blue chip brands try to reverse engineer a sense of community. So they're trying to hack, how can we create community? And a lot of it is not genuine because that's not where they started. They started from a point of how do we profit off these people.
Right.
Now they're realizing that, the way the world, is communicating is shifting, and the way that people consume is shifting. So for you, I think the number one thing you need to do is identify your tribe. Is it young people, young immigrants, first generation kids, ages 16 to 22, whatever it is, you need to kind of get granular, take some surveys of the people that currently consume your content, go back and contact the people that bought your merch, and just learn a little bit more about them, right? What other brands do they wear? What TV shows do they watch? What do they consume outside of the internet? What are the different touch points? And the more you learn about your community, the more you're going to be able to tailor your content to speak to their needs. Right? And once you're able to do that, what you do is you build a real tribe, and by delivering value to them over time in a bunch of different ways, you're also able to create more opportunities to monetize from that, right? So, in my case, a lot of the things that I do now are amplified by the sense, by the a lot of things I do now, like owning a cafe and having that be, this really like this hub for culture.
Right.
Some of the work that I do on the creative agency side, even how I raise funds for my real estate investment fund, a lot of it is because of what I represent as a person and as a personal brand. Right. My values and my story shines through in terms of in terms of the content I produce and all of that thing. And I think what that does is it then creates credibility for other businesses that you own.
Right.
So you got to think about, if you're delivering the podcast consistently, and I love the idea of kind of, donating and doing these giveaways and all of that. But to me, a lot of that's just very surface level.
Right.
I would start digging even deeper. What do people really need right now during this time? Right. A lot of people during this time need someone to talk to. They need, some sense of purpose. They need inspiration. They need tactical advice on how to, get out of the situation that they're in now and move on to, that next thing in their life. And if you start to tailor content and create solutions for them, right, for your tribe, that's how you're going to succeed. So that's kind of like what I've done on a very small scale, because I'll be honest, I spent I probably spent the past 6 years 85% focused on my business and 15% focused on my personal brand.
Right.
I think that if I had taken steps to focus on my personal brand early on, before Instagram became saturated, before Twitter became saturated, I think I would have been at a completely different place right now.
Right.
But for me, it was just like I got to build real businesses that generate revenue more than I need to build myself up. That was my opinion at that time.
Right.
So I spent a lot of time building businesses, and then I spent that little bit of time building my brand, right? So my tagline, the oldest son of an immigrant, or these things that you see are things that I've crafted over the years, but I could do a lot more, on that content side. I could do a lot more doubling down into first generation immigrant story. I don't do a podcast. I don't do certain things that I know would be beneficial to me just because it's a bandwidth thing, right? So for you, figure out where's your energy best delivering ROI, right? Is it the podcast? Is it writing weekly articles? Is it hosting a Zoom happy hour for young creatives of color? figure out kind of like what you need to do to tap into the needs of your tribe. And I always tell people, and I always tell brands when I'm consulting them, is like what you need to do is listen more. And I'm sure you are listening, but one thing is like just invite everyone who bought a T-shirt to a free Zoom call, on a Friday, and just say like, hey, I want to do a Q&A, or I want to, get some time for all of us to connect. You're all a part of my tribe. You all bought this shirt. We all share a similar, mission in common. Let's talk about how we can activate heading up to a political season, or let's talk about your business, or let's talk about, and do a Q&A in that way. And things like that, that's when you start listening and taking notes, like, oh, this is what my community needs. And then you create the content, you create the products, you create the stories that fill the needs of those people.
Right.
Does that answer the question a little bit?
That makes so much more sense because so the whole basis of my podcast, right? It's called Campus Cuts, and so let me just search up this thing real quick. Um, the whole basis of the podcast was Campus Cuts it's an intergenerational multicultural show that brings together students, faculty, and community members from all walks of life to chop it up at the barbershop. Of course, you love Black culture, right? So you understand that the sentiment of the barbershop and how important how it is like for Black people to have that dialogue, right? But instead, so the whole thing about that was at my school at Baylor, I served as to the government, and I was the diversity and inclusion guy because they thought I was safe, right? But one is like, how am I able to create the experience of LeBron James to shop, right? And so where everybody with different perspectives are able to have their voices heard. Like that's what I'm really, really big on, right? To be able to continue to understand impact over profit, all this, that, whatever. And so it was like, me interviewing and having different people. And because my whole job was to go on listening tours. And I really think that what you just said about connecting, like having that Zoom happy hour. I was actually supposed to go on like a Zoom happy hour call with Humble the Poet. I love his book. And then after that, I'm like, I never thought about doing that because I thought I had to continue to have like a little bit of a bigger profile, right? But I'm like, wait, no. If it's all about the community and whatever, like, JH told me like, yo, it's just a matter of time before you get big, right? Like he said I'm on the right path. I have the energy, whatever. Once that TEDx talk comes off, like that should raise it a little bit. If you continue to be consistent in doing all that, then that will continue to happen. But I didn't even think about, oh yeah, let me have a Zoom call. I didn't even think about that because I'm like still kind of stuck on the building the personal brand side.
Sure. Yeah, I'll give you an example, man. JH and I launched a clothing brand earlier this year, and it's called Equity Apparel. And one of the things that we did, around the launch was everybody that purchased in the first week was invited to a private Q&A session that him and I hosted, where we just, went through everybody's questions about real estate, startup culture, whatever was on their mind. And people were just like, yo, this was so dope. I bought a T-shirt and I got like a business consultation as well. And so thinking about how that sense of community plays into everything, everything that you do. So if you're dropping a podcast, there may be a crucial section of that discussion that you feel like, hey, this is really important for people to learn about. Go ahead and take that and do like an open survey, or make that the topic of your Zoom session, right? And really like create more dialogue out of the things that you're doing, because it seems like you have a very strong sense of where and why you're creating, which I think is so important. It's not like you're not running a podcast about SaaS product or something that's very like self-indulgent. For you, you're running a podcast that's already community oriented, right? So, given that, think about where else you can spread your tentacles, because what happens nowadays is the way that people consume, content. You're speaking to people who are already subscribed to your podcast, but if you're able to bring in a Q&A session, or maybe, a couple other elements to it that are tangential to your podcast,
right?
Now you're speaking to a whole wider demographic of people,
right?
And you're going to have people tag you in, people are going to be like, yo, listen to this guy. and you're gonna see the spread. And your job, it's like coronavirus, right? Like you want a high positivity rate. How many people does your content touch, right? So like right now, maybe it's spreading to one or two people. How can you get that to spread to 4 or 5 people? You
Right.
got to create more powerful stuff. You know,
Right.
does
Right.
that kind of get in the same lane of where you're thinking?
Yeah. Like, and of course, the book Contagious, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. Um, when I had this consulting call with JH, he asked me, "Yo, like, when it comes to like my IG profile and whatever, like, when he talks to me, he's like, oh yeah, I'm able to see it, but now what you got to do is like, what is your why? Like, I have my big why, but I never had my small why. So like, I was really
Mm-hmm.
thinking about it, and I really crafted like, what is my small, um, simple one sentence why? And my why is like Tanaka Tava taps into creative entrepreneurship to develop a world that represents and empowers people through authentic self-expression. I'm really
Okay.
like I that for this season is my
Yep.
why. The end goal is to be able to have a multimedia production company that is um, having all different perspectives and that is actually like tangible and like not like a Netflix or whatever where they like donate money and they try to do this that, but like to actually
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
have that representation. Like you're talking about um, you know I've grown up in a very culturally and thoughtfully diverse community around people. I've always been trying to be very intentional about like growing like what are the roots of the deep story. I don't want to be no journalist. Like I want to be on TV, act, but also produce and get other people to elevate themselves. Like I'm all about trying to find a way to promote other people or use my platform to continue to share other people's
Right.
content or share, not like never thought about me.
Okay.
So that's that
Well,
is
yeah. Now I understand a little bit more. I think one thing, and this is something that I have to take my own advice as well. I would tell you to niche down. I'm sure you might have even heard this from JH. I would tell you to um, create a narrower focus because right now your mission statement, though it's right on point, is extremely broad.
right.
It can apply to a lot of different people in a lot of different ways and a lot of different. Um, it's a little bit like it sounds a little bit fluffy, and I'm just keeping it real with you.
Hey,
Like if I have to,
that's fine.
if I have to, give you my mission statement, and this is something I think about a lot too. It's for me, it's my job is to educate and empower minorities to become business owners in order to create generational wealth. I want to educate black and brown people to start businesses and build real wealth. And that's it. Right? So now when you hear that, you're like, all right, this guy he's about business, he's about underrepresented populations and communities, and he's about, wealth and kind of like a larger generational purpose, right? For you got to niche it down a little bit. So are you a platform for other creators and other people? You want to amplify their voices? Are you a connector? Do you bring together two people on your podcast and do you mediate? Are you um, or are you a teacher? Do you give people advice on how they can get better? And those things, though they all fall on, and those all fall under the category that the mission statement that you gave, right? But
Right.
they're so different. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Right.
Those two things are literally like completely different, right? Like you got Gary Vee, who is more of an educator. You have, I'm trying to think. I mean, you have like a Gerard Adams, who's like more of a mediator, and you have plenty of people who play more of like who play that role of like trying to fix problems, right, and trying to be a solution oriented guy. So you got to really focus. You got to focus your energy on exactly what are you delivering.
Right.
To me, it seems like you have a little bit more. You're leaning towards more of like you are a platform for. You want to create a platform for other people that think similarly to be able to share their story and inspire somebody else. Is
Right.
that correct?
Yeah, like that is the end goal. Like that is what whether if it's gonna be documentaries or whatever, like that type of stuff. Um, that is
So
absolutely correct.
you know what you need is you need You need a home run to put you on the map. But the thing about a home run is it's different. A home run is different from a grand slam. And what I mean by that is you need to create one piece of content, one event, one thing that basically swells in this community that you're trying to reach. It basically goes 5 to 10 times bigger than you usually do, right? So it's a podcast episode that gets 10 times your usual listens, or it's a tweet that goes off, or it's a course that you do that brings in 10 times the amount of people that you typically do. And the reason I say that is because what that does is it puts you on a map. It puts you on a radar, and you seem like a very proactive person. So once you're on the radar, you just follow up, boom, 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 way more content. And I think um, that's the type of way you should be focusing. Is like, all right, let me create something. Let me take a little bit of time. I'm doing a lot right now. Let me bring it in. Let me create one Q&A session, one Zoom, community meetup, one thing that really hits. And from there, I got all my episodes coming. I got all these things that can follow that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think that's like what's kind of like the theme. You know, it's like I'm already. I mean, of course, there's always room for improvement. But for somebody like for this has all happened in the span of like 7 months.
Sure.
Podcasts. Boom, like hitting over like 6 figures, like through investing or whatever. Boom, like
Sure.
like writing, dropping a book, whatever. But I know that it's like, what is that going to put that thing that is going to put me over the edge? I mean, granted, like I had Russ retweet, like he said, how has the book helped you? I tweeted like, yo, help me, like book a TED talk, whatever. You retweeted me. I got a response from you. Got a response from JH. Then joining like getting him, doing a Q&A, doing the same exact thing with you. Okay, cool. Podcast. Put that on the podcast. Devon Franklin liking, tweeting, and whatever, saying, yo, when he got his TV deal, I was like, yo, congratulations, I'm gonna be mentored by you. Like, I'm really big on speaking things into
For
existence. They're like
sure.
the
For sure.
secret, and so like I know that these are all like the chess moves. And of course,
Yeah.
I started a course like to help people like to help them with podcasts and whatever. I mean, like only like very few people did like bought it, but those few people, when I had that conversation with them, they were like, "Yo, it's not you actually know a lot, bro." Like they're
Right.
like, "Yo, people are
Right.
doubting." Like I know they're like, "Yo, people are doubting you. They're not really sure. Like, how did you blow up on Instagram? How do you do this? How do you do that? Like, did you buy? Did you whatever?" And I was like, "No, not really. I'm just doing me." And then
Right.
it's just like continuing to be consistent. But I know I need that thing that's gonna.
You need that, and you know what you need. It's a funny dichotomy in a sense. You need a really niche focus, and something needs to go big with that focus. You feel what I'm saying? Because that is where I think right now you're seeing a little bit of like you're seeing the swell, you're seeing the momentum, but I think you're very broad right now,
Right.
and you gotta just bring it in because what happens when you're very broad is it doesn't hit people enough.
Right.
It hits, but it's like, oh yeah, this was cool. Like I've also heard this message elsewhere. But when you get super specific, you talk about a certain group of people, a certain age, or a certain story. When you get super specific, those people are like, oh shit, this hits. I'm gonna share it, to everybody I know that can relate to it, and that basically creates a larger um, shift in momentum for you as a creator than something that's broad and kind of goes up but doesn't really go off.
Right. Right.
So yeah, man, I mean, look, even right now you're in Tulum. You have seems like you have a lot of freedom. In terms of like how you spend your day. The rest of the world is very unsure. About what they're doing and what moves to make and whatnot. I think there's an opportunity for you to either vlog this or for you to document this, and I know you are doing it in certain ways. So, I'm a creator who has to get inspired. I took a risk. I came out here. Here's how I'm spending my time out here. And you give people, you peel back the layers of how you operate and what you do. And I think what people will see is like, oh, this guy he really goes for his, and I respect that. And now I'm inspired to do something else. Let me follow him and see what else he's doing. Does that make sense? It's just basically taking pieces of yourself and creating something that's easy to digest for your audience.
Right. Right. And I mean, like I have taken into consideration. Been doing a little bit of the vlog thing. because I realized that there's only so much that like on Instagram, whatever, that's going to showcase. That's why like started with YouTube and my friend
Right.
Israel, like one of my best friends, and he's helping me with the podcast and whatever, and we're thinking about creating our own show together. It's like the beauty of you is like you are like you. I was telling my friend Nim of this yesterday. I just love to do everything. Like I'm not necessarily I want to be great at everything, but like I know that I'm not a specialist. I'm a generalist, which sucks. I don't like labeling myself,
For
but like
sure.
I'm
For
a
sure.
generalist,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
That's a good piece of self awareness.
yeah,
For sure.
and so I'm like, even though I'm a generalist, the thing is, I may not know everything. I may not be specifically, but I'm pretty well. I mean, for my age, I'm pretty well versed, and I like to be knowledgeable. But it's my tenacity, my hunger, but also my curiosity that continues to help me like build and be able to reach out to older people, younger people, and just continuing to learn,
For
right?
sure. Yeah, for
And then
sure.
so it's like he said that even though it might be you look like you're everywhere, I see the vision, and it's so good that you're doing the podcast because it shows like your essence of you being like a quote like a
Hundred
Renaissance man,
percent. Hundred
and like
percent.
it's
Yep.
nuance and
And
there's detail, right?
I'm gonna tell you how to answer that question if people ask it in the future too, because I get a lot of that too. Like, oh, you do a lot of different things. You have a lot of different businesses. Like, how do you manage all of it? And to me, it's not different because the thread that runs through all those things is the same thing, right? So for you, the thread that ties all of the things that you do together is the same. It's based off of your desire to empower the people, that are going to define creativity and thought leadership for the next generation, right? And you want to be a platform for that. So everything you do relates back to that goal, and that's what I would tell people is like, they may seem different on paper, but they're all united by my thread of wanting to do X, Y, and Z. In terms of tangible steps, I'm going to tell you kind of what I think you should do. Um, if you have any data on your users, whether it's email addresses, phone numbers, whatnot, the first thing I would do is really go ahead and create a survey or a couple questions that you can reach out to them about and say, hey, life is crazy, things are getting weird. Um, what are some of the anxieties that you have about this year? How can I help? How are you coping with it right now? What other things would help you cope? Be that person that fills a real need in the community. Be a person that really fills a need with the type of content you're creating. Once you do that, you start to listen and you get a little bit of you get a couple of data points, right,
Yeah,
on what your community is going through. From there, start to incorporate that in your content and then see where that takes you. Do a three month audit and say, wow, okay, after I listened and I incorporate some of the stuff, here's where I'm at. So if your community tells you, hey, we really need to figure out how to create a side hustle during the pandemic,
right.
go ahead and kick off a Q&A the week after, which focuses on how to create a legitimate side hustle, during these times. Invite people to it, have them share. There's a way that you can maybe say, hey, you have to bring a guest to be able to get in for free. Simple little hacks like that just deliver volume, and then deliver your message to a bunch of people. Because I think you're a clear thinker. You have a good sense of purpose. With you, I think the deal is you just gotta
Niche
you
down.
just have to, yeah, you gotta niche down and you gotta create some things that hit a little bit harder.
Right.
Uh, Give me one. I have to take this call real quick, but I'm just gonna mute you. Just stay on.
Yeah, yeah.
sorry, man, I have this closing that I have to get done tomorrow, and it's just nuts. But
Dude,
anyway,
I bet. I know, bro. I saw your stories, man. It's like you really in some deep.
I'm in some shit, more
Yeah.
or less. But yeah, I think you got to niche down a little bit because I think that because I think that's the way. I think you're gonna relate to more people and you're gonna get more spread if you uh, center your focus a little.
Yeah. Now, this is kind of like a question or like kind of like pushback about the niche thing, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's more of like, what can I like? I'm still trying to find it. Like, really been thinking about this while I'm here on vacation. Like, just needed rest, and I'm like, man, a lot of great stuff has happened. I have to deal with a lot of losses too, right? And now it's like, what this like? Sometimes I deal with this imposter syndrome. Like, damn, I feel like, oh man, I'm not getting my chops as much respect as I should, man. I'm like, I'm doing shit no one has done at 21 years old, and it's like,
right,
and also, like, your story about like, your kidney thing about earn your leisure. I'm like, I've gone through a similar experience of like almost dying multiple times and whatever, and like my stories, like it's funny, like how am I public speaking when I wasn't able to speak until like I was 4 years
sure,
old, had a speech
sure.
impediment with Duff, like
Mm-hmm.
all these trials and tribulations, but I know that I'm just gonna keep going, right? And so
Right.
sometimes I deal with this imposter syndrome, like, am I offering any value, or like what way is it going to be valuable that it's going to be like tangible? I'm
Yeah.
honestly I'm honestly in entrepreneurship because I couldn't get a job. Like I got rejected from Walmart and Kroger. I'm like, huh? Like, got
Right.
this stacked resume, involved in college, whatever, and I'm a great student. But I mean, I know
Right.
that I'm like, I mean, the end all be all is like, yo, I want to be in movies and write stuff and do that because that's what
Right.
I love. But I'm like, damn, but
Right.
I don't want to be a starving artist. Like with Nip, like I don't want to be a starving artist because that's not the wave. And I'm about generational wealth. Like my dad, auntie, they're millionaires, whatever. He built a tax business. My auntie does, assisted living. And so I'm like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
there's a path right there.
Yep.
But like
Yep.
they're doing it. Like they came over here when they were very very young. Same with my mom, and they were able to do that. So I'm like, yeah.
Right.
And my dad's always asking, so what you want to do? You don't want to be a doctor anymore. And I'm like, I mean, I want to act, or like I want to have a production company like Granity
Right.
Studios and
Right.
Devon Franklin, because I really resonate. Like I know that I have the gift of gab a little bit, and trying to continue to refine, or like similar with like Nick
Right.
Cannon. But it's just like,
Yeah. When it
sometimes
comes
I
to
think I'm too young. Like I think I'm too young. Like what do I know? I'm 21. Like, huh?
nah, man, I think when it comes to imposter syndrome, I think that is something that is the most useless thing that you can spend any type of energy on. Because if you even let 1% of imposter syndrome seep into you, you're not going to be able to perform at the level you need to get to your goals.
Right.
Simply put, there's no space for that. It's like water and oil don't mix, right? So
Right.
if your goals are water, you cannot put oil into the equation. It's not going to work. So I've done a lot of things in my life that I never thought I could do. I never have had imposter syndrome. It's weird. I've been around people that have suffered from it, and it's really ruined a lot of careers from my perspective. But to me, it's like my belief in my end goal is so strong
Right.
that isn't anything in between that can crush that.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And so you have to kind of anchor yourself the same way to be like, look, if I want X, Y, and Z, because what you're going for is a Herculean, superhuman level of effort, right?
Yeah. No
You're
cap.
gonna take if you're gonna put the super hero cape on, you're not gonna get scared by a mouse, or you're not gonna get scared by a roach or whatever, right?
Right.
That's what imposter syndrome is. It's like it's an insect, to a superhuman. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
You can't have. So when you put that superhuman shit on, you gotta own it. Like, nah, this is who I am. Doubt is necessary, right? Doubt is,
Right.
is essential, but that's different from not believing.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a sense of belief, man. And if you've already come so far, you gotta believe that there's more ahead for you, and that's that. But yeah, that's how I approach the imposter syndrome thing. And honestly, I think when people tell you that you're too young, or that uh, you don't have enough experience or whatnot, those are people reflecting their fears onto you.
Right.
They were too young, or they missed out on opportunities, or they didn't know themselves as well at 21, and so they're telling you those things. Look, their elders do hold a lot of truth, right? Like
Yeah,
as young people,
yeah,
we learn that the hard way. So it's not about that, but I think I'll tell you straight up, like you could screw up your whole life in the next 4 years, but at 25, if you were to start over, you'd still have enough time to get your shit together. So
exactly.
this time for you is really a beta test, and I know it seems weird when you're in it and you're like, holy shit, I gotta win because I gotta survive. And I was the same way. I ran a record label from when I was 16 to 26, and every day for those 10 years, I was in like this crazy pressure cooker in my life. Like I just, I didn't know how to figure it out. I had a lot of wins, I had a lot of losses, and I spent 10 years in it. It changed my life. It showed me the world. I learned so much from it. But
Right.
at the end of those 10 years, I walked away from that business taking a big financial L because of shit that went down with my partners, and I was like, damn, like but I had experienced so much that money didn't matter,
Right.
and I was able to take my experience, leverage that into a creative agency, make six figures in the first year, and then 6 years later end up where I am now. So like I bled for my dream for 10 years. At the end of those 10 years, ended up losing 15 grand, and was like, holy shit, do I really have to start over?
Yeah.
And so just know that you have time. That's my thing here is that you got way more time than you think, and you have a lot more time to experiment, be
Right.
wrong,
Right.
get back up, try shit, get better. And that's a lot. That's something that I didn't give myself when I was young. I felt like I had to hit, um, everything, the bullseye every time. I wish I had taken more time to just experiment and try shit.
Yeah, and I mean that's something like was Gary said, and like JH is like, we do have a lot more time, but like I know for me, I'm just like, sometimes I'm like, well, yeah, that's true. Like, everybody like being 40, like 40 is not that old, but at the
40's
same
not,
time, like
40's not old, man. It's
it's
really
not,
not. Most
it's
men
not
peak in the early 40s. Like that's when they finally step into who they are, and it's
right.
crazy, but it's cool.
Right,
So
right. I guess sometimes because how everything just happened so fast up to this point, like I'm just like,
right,
okay, cool. A lot of things are happening a little bit faster, whatever, whatever. That's cool. Like, there's a little
right.
bit of traction, but like, I don't want to be quick. I do not want to be a one-hit wonder. It's all about, and
I'm gonna leave you. Yeah, I hear you. I'm gonna leave you with this because this is something that I also needed to learn. Your success is not gonna be linear. It's not
yeah,
gonna go up and get better every year, and you have to stomach that and accept that. You are going to have to, go up and then go back down to be able to go up again and take it to that next height. That's that tension that's in growth. So I'll just keep it a buck with you. Like it's not going to be linear.
right.
I'm experiencing that for myself at my age. I thought, I had crossed a certain point where I was like, oh, I'm only going up from here. And then coronavirus come through, and it's like, oh, okay, everything is on hold for the next, 18 months because we don't know how we're going to eat.
Right,
Because restaurants, music business, real estate, everything is in massive flux.
right.
So now I'm like, oh, okay, this is not going to be as linear as I thought. And I'm 32, and I've been through the fire. So just embrace that. It's not going to be linear, but if your end goal is still where it is and your North Star, you're pushing towards it, it's just part of the growth process.
Mm. So when you say niche down, do you think niche down in terms of the whole purpose, like in terms of everything, or just in the
Niche
season?
down in the way you deliver your content.
Okay, okay, niche down away.
Keep the purpose big, keep the vehicles niche.
Purpose, big, vehicles, niche, and then so like talking to me, because you said like the creator, there's the idea of the teacher, there's the idea of the connector, whatever. Like from just this interaction, what would you say is
Yeah.
like At? You're more like this, like you're more of this is who you are.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if I have a clear answer. I will say, if you're more of a generalist, then being a connector is typically more suited for your personality
Right,
because when you invite people up and you start talking about things, if you don't know specific, if you don't know certain, how to communicate in that language, it does hinder you a little bit,
right,
right? But if you have the ability to connect, and whether that's connecting to people or connecting with one person to elevate their story, there's a lot of wealth in that. So like um, you, how I built this with Guy Raz, the NPR podcast. I don't know if you've
yes,
if you've
yes,
that. Guy Raz to me is not a specialist because he doesn't. I don't know what he did before this. He's a generalist. He's really good at his job, but I think he's more of like a listener and a connector, and that's what makes him so great. And there's space for that. Not everybody needs to be an expert. Some people can just be the connectors, the grease in the wheel that keeps things moving and connects the different types of thinkers and different types of things. But you're about to give a TED talk, so you can make that transition into being a specialist. You know what I mean? And you can really niche down on your personal brand depending on what that story is.
Yeah.
So I would really use that moment to define this is what I'm going to be talking about and this is who I am going for.
Yeah, and I know your time is very valuable, but like my idea of the TED Talk is called the highlight effect, and the basis of the highlight effect is how have I been able to utilize my successes or my endeavors to continue to inspire other people, and like stories about like how other people were highlighted in order for them to shine.
Right,
Like
right.
my friends have always said like, "Yo, bro, you're so inspiring. Like you inspired me to do this podcast. You inspired me to write this book. You like just your whole aura and your whole being." And I know that for me, because sometimes there's sometimes in my heart I'm like, well, nobody really did that for me, but I know that I
Yep.
want to be able to do that for other people and actually give
Yeah,
them
for sure,
love.
for sure. So yeah, it's basically you're paying it forward,
Yeah,
and you're giving while you go, and that's a powerful statement.
right. And that's the whole basis of the TED Talk. So I think
Make sure you nail that, and then that's going to open up a ton of opportunities and also allow you to be an expert, a leader in that space, and that's how you're going to move forward. So hopefully this was helpful. I appreciate you for scheduling the session. You have my email, so anytime you want to reach out about something, definitely use me as a resource. And if it's helpful to hop back on a call, you let me know. I'm happy to do that.
yes, sir, man. I really appreciate it, man. That like, I guess it's just another confirmation. I'm really grateful for your advice, your time, your experience, and you just giving me some game. It's really helped a lot.
For sure. You got it, man. Keep going. Just don't stop. Be consistent.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right.
Have a blessed day, man.
Yes, sir. Be well. Peace.